All right, y'all. I am back. And this week on Mike Makes Ross Watch Anime, which apparently is what this Mike segment is turning into, I am watching Kotaro Lives Alone. It is a show on Netflix. It is 10 episodes. Each episode's about 25-ish minutes or so. It's got about three segments each with like this general theme. But essentially, if you don't know, like I didn't know, Kotaro Lives Alone is about this little guy named Kotaro here. He is a 4-year-old child. That's four with a capital F. Four-year-old Japanese kid who, like the title says, lives alone. Now, he lives in this apartment complex of misfit toys, apparently, because we got a Tamaru, I think is his name here. Or no, Carino, I think is his name here. We got Tamaru over there, is a Yakuza looking guy. And then we got neighbor prostitute chick, which we'll get into. I'm just going to go right off the bat, tell you spoilers, full on spoilers for the show. So if you've never seen it, watch Kotaro Lives Alone, then come on back and then we can talk. You can listen to me talk some more. Two, I'm not even going to try to go by people's real names except for my man Kotaro here. Three, I gotta tell you right off the bat, I don't know what to make of this show. I don't know what to make of it. Now, with that said, let's get into Kotaro Lives Alone. Mike described this to me as a quote unquote slice of life anime. Okay. Said it numerous times on our show, said it numerous times on here. I'm not an anime guy. So slice of life anime means nothing to me. I don't know what that means. Apparently, though, it means 4-year-olds who talk like feudal lords. Apparently, he's got the soul of a feudal lord. The language of the feudal lord speaks to his soul. That's why this kid, he talks like, I can't even explain it. He talks like a 60-year-old man in a 4-year-old's body. And it's completely insane, but I'll give it the credit it deserves. It's a hook, and it got me involved, and it gets pretty much everybody in the show just completely perplexed and involved with this kid, trying to figure out this little mystery that is Kotaro. Now, right off the bat, slice of life anime. If this is a particular genre of anime, great. If they're all as weird as this, maybe I'd be able to get into it, because I got to tell you, I was only supposed to watch like 4 episodes or so. Mike just told me to watch the first one to get into it, watch the last one because apparently there's a big emotional kick in the dick. And then at some other point, he sees like 3 episodes, three is pretty good. Episode 6 is pretty good. Just make sure you watch those. I was like, okay, whatever. So I started watching the show. And of course, after episode 1, I'm like, this kid is a serial killer. There is a mystery about what happened to his parents. I don't think the mystery is that deep or that difficult, because as you can see, that's a toy sword that he's holding. That's like the first thing that you notice about him. He has this toy sword on him that I'm sure he slaughtered his parents with, because A, 4-year-old talks like a 60-year-old. B, he is meticulous with journaling, just like John Doe in Seven. And he is very adept at living on his own. And he can get by on his own. He's a jack of all trades kind of thing. He's fairly good at pretty much everything that involves living alone. He's a gourmet cook for some reason. He probably learned this because of all the different souls he's consumed in his cannibalistic serial killer life. 4 years old, mind you. 4 years old, and he's living by himself in Japan. I've heard Japan's a beautiful country, but if you're just letting 4-year-olds rent apartments because, and I quote, he can afford the rent, that is an issue that even American society would say, hey, you probably need to address this. Now, as we move forward, obviously, and it's to my dismay, Kotaro is not proven to be a serial killer in this show. He's just an eccentric little kid who speaks the way he does because he watches this cartoon show, Tono Samaru, I think is it, or Tono Samu. It's again these Japanese names. I'm not even going to offend the entire country or culture by mispronouncing them or trying to pronounce them correctly. It's not going to end well. It's a cartoon about this little samurai, and the kid loves it. He loves this show, and that's why he has the little sword, and that's why he basically tries to live his life the way he does. He's living it based on this cartoon, which You find out, like everything else in Kotaro's life, has some sort of emotional meaning behind it. And it's essentially like the comfort show that has kept him not feeling alone when because he lives by himself and because his home life was so jacked up, and he kind of had to retreat to that for some solace and all that. So I get it. Kids got some issues at home. Sure. Turns out, and again, like I said, full spoilers, this kid's getting a weekly allowance, and he only knows that it's coming from, he's only told that it's from his social worker, basically, that it's a lawyer who's charged with delivering this money to him and checking up on him every week. She tells him, Kobayashi is her name, and I remember that because it was equating it to like the hot dog eater, and I was like, oh yeah, Kobayashi, there you go, whatever, or the Kobayashi Maru, from Star Trek. So she shows up, and one of his first questions is, hey, where's this money come from? And she says, from a generous benefactor. Turns out that it is actually his mother's life insurance payment that's paying out, and Kotaro doesn't know because he still thinks she's alive. He thinks that she essentially went to the store one day and one day will come back. That old thing. Now, you might be asking, where is his dad in this situation? Well, it turns out his dad was a bit of an abusive asshole. So Kotaro ran away and had to join a group home or an orphanage. And then he left that group home or orphanage because his dad found it. So using his mother's life insurance or the payment that he gets from his generous benefactor, he has rented this apartment with this crew. And the story goes from there, basically. And each episode you get a little bit, another layer of the onion is peeled on Kotaro and why he is the way he is and why he does the way he does things. And it's very, very weird. And it's granted, it's well done, but it's very odd and confusing. And I'm just sitting here the whole time, like kind of like I was with Arcane. I'm sitting there like this the whole time. Just like confused and not annoyed. I'll tell you that. I was not annoyed. I was intrigued, very intrigued, because I'm waiting for the one reveal where it's just his next this manga guy. It's his friend here. He's a manga artist, which this show is based off of. It's based off of a manga from 2015, and I'm waiting for him to knock on Kotaro's door one day and hear like a scuffle behind it. He's going to open the door. He's going to find Kotaro elbows deep in some poor sap that he picked up, like a homeless guy, like a drifter that he picked up off the road. He's just going to town him just to feed his bloodlust. Unfortunately, none of that happens because that would be too good for me. But what we do get is every episode and every character here is gradually fleshed out over the course of the season. And almost every episode involves Kotaro in some way revealing the truth about something and using his wise beyond his 4 years knowledge and way of the world and his experience to solve these people's personal problems and make them better people. And just that part of it kind of pissed me off because it got, especially in the last couple episodes, it becomes really apparent because that's like the point of the last couple episodes. It's very apparent that either the writers wanted to go for like the emotional sappy ending every time, or likewise the Kotaro is this little like, he's this little like, I don't want to say guardian angel, but he's this little like slice of happiness or little like pixie dust that comes into someone's life when they're down, and he helps them out because he's got it all together essentially. But everyone really just feels sorry for him for the most part. But then he'll do something that like a 60-year-old man would do, like go to the bathhouse, and he'll just make everyone's life better. And like I said, it's annoying, but at the same time, I understand why they did it. But it also at the same time, I'm like, I don't need this to happen every episode. One of these episodes, I just want some mystery backstory revealed or something like that. Like there's one character, and it's the redhead over here. She's his neighbor. she is like not the manic pixie dream girl, but she's like the hot neighbor next door. And she is what's called a hostess. Now, not being familiar with the term in Japanese culture, I texted Mike like I tend to do when I'm watching things that he recommends. So I texted him, I said, so Kotaro goes to the club that she works at, Club Dream, which sounds like a fine establishment where totally upstanding legal things happen, right? I've been to plenty of places called Club Dream where hot women work, and they're not just serving me buffalo wings. Let's put it that way. They're doing other things for money, not sexual things. Well, they're strippers. That's what I'm getting at. They're strippers. That's not the case with her. In this case, it turns out that host or hostess, and Mike, as Mike informed me, is basically like a girlfriend experience type prostitute where like you can hire these women to spend time with you, go out on dates with you, and they don't ever explicitly say anything happens sexually between them. There's nothing implied really, but from the Western culture standpoint, Western standpoint point of view, I hear hostess, the way she dresses in this particular club where guys can pay for her company. I'm thinking prostitute because what else would you think? You know? And there's this other character that shows up, a former friend from Kotaro's group home who is a host. This kid's a gigolo too, you know? And it's apparently that's just the other way that people make money in Japan. If you can't do anything else, if you can't write manga, of course, at least according to this, if you're not a school teacher or you write manga or you draw manga, you got to be a prostitute apparently. Or in the case of Purple Suit guy back here with the glasses, mysterious yakuza type. You know, maybe he's a gangster, maybe he's an ex-gangster. He's very prone to violence, he's very excitable. He's that stock anime stereotype where it's like the really excitable guy who does very emotional things all the time. And it's that kind of thing that keeps me away from anime, because when those guys show up, I just go, this is weird, it's stupid and childish, and I don't like it. And of course, that guy, like I said, everybody in the show, it gets fleshed out, gets a little more character development throughout the entirety of the show, which is great. Lesser shows wouldn't care to do that. They would keep them all the same, and you'd never know about them except for their punchlines. With the Yakuza guy, on the other hand, it turns out that he's like divorced or separated from his ex-wife or girlfriend, estranged maybe from his girlfriend. I can't remember if they said it's his wife or not, but they have a kid, and he's very much unable to see his kid because of the agreement that he has with his ex. And so he's always trying to get attention from Kotaro, like give him hugs and be a father figure, that kind of thing. And it's a pretty good running gag where Kotaro's always like being like, look, man, back off. And he's got his little sword and he's always putting it in his face, like keep it arm's length, butthead. Like, dude, I'm not trying to get hugs from you all the time, you know. And then one of the like the end of the one episode, he turns it around and he holds it against his dick too, and he's like, it's like, keep your distance. And I was like, all right, Kotaro knows what's up. But it's, you get more backstory for hostess girl too, who leaves the show at one point. She just disappears in like episode 7 because her abusive ex-boyfriend has beaten her up. She doesn't want him to know where she lives, so she kind of runs away. And it's very odd because I kind of wanted her to stick around, because in like the second episode, she and Kotaro go on this sleepover, and it starts off with them going to the bathhouse and him bathing her, and she's naked, covered in suds, and my man's there with his little shower cap and all that, and he's bathing her and all that. It's a very, very weird scene, but it's only a split-second scene, because I think even the Japanese animators knew that if we're going to put this on Netflix in the United States, this might not play too well if we go much longer than a brief gag. So then they have food, and then they sleep over, and she uses Kotaro's arm as a pillow. And it's very much a first date. It's very much a Kotaro is going out with her and she's loving it. And it's a very meet cute experience type of rom-com, little mini rom-com. And she's basically a unpaid girlfriend experience prostitute for Kotaro. Again, a 4-year-old. Now, the fact that maybe he talks like a 6-year-old, maybe that makes a difference in Japanese culture. I don't know. Apparently, your age doesn't matter. It's just how mature you are, I guess. And it's a funny little thing, and it's used to establish their friendship and how he cares. He's able to come in everybody's life and just immediately turn things around for them and make them feel better. And it's nice, and it's very funny. But at the same time, I'm like, oh, okay, we got a 4-year-old bathing a hot prostitute. what's happening? Just what is happening right now? I don't understand what's going on. And like I said, her character development out of the show, she develops herself out of the show, is kind of annoying because she's replaced by this other girl who is afraid of kids or doesn't like kids. She's very uncomfortable around children. Um, you find out though, because everyone who comes into Kotaro's life is somehow linked to him in some similar way. They're all broken. Like I said, it's the apartment complex of misfit toys. So this woman comes in and she replaces prostitute neighbor girl, and she, like I said, hates kids. But then it turns out that her mother could only touch her while wearing rubber like rubber gloves, and it was the only way she could touch her. And Kotaro's mom was the same way, and they kind of share a bond that way. And it's every time you think someone's going to come into Kotaro's life, he's going to help him out. He's going to help him realize that things aren't so bad. At the same time, some weird, horrifyingly depressing backstory element is introduced about these characters. And most of the time, when I was just texting Mike and I'm putting in my notes, I'm just putting what the F, what is going on here? What am I watching? Why is it like this? Is everyone in Japan secretly broken and just determined to live their life running away from their past, And it's, of course, like I said, Kotaro is like the magical little child who just, because his life is so broken and so bad, the backstory is so rough, he has the knowledge to help the world. And it's great. It's a great message that we can learn from kids or something like that. But at the same time, I'm watching this and I'm thinking this is a great message, but it's horrifying and this is depressing. And it's not conveyed to me in a way that I like. Like I said, this is the animated style that I think of about anime that I don't like. It's that just left of Studio Ghibli kind of style. And I'm not I'm not a fan of it. And while the story was very intriguing and I watched the entire show simply because I needed to know more and I needed to know what happened at the end of this, I'm also thinking to myself, there's no way I'm going to watch anything similar to this unless I have to for you guys. It's just not drawing me in. And I'm really only watching because I need to know if anyone will ever tell this kid his mom is dead. And turns out, spoiler alert, still big twist in the episode 10. Like Mike said, there's an emotional kick in the dick at one point. He and his manga buddy neighbor here go to Kotaro's grandparents' grave and they clean it because that's what Kotaro used to do with his mom when he was a kid. Of course, that was 2 years ago because he's 4. And they go to the grave, they start cleaning the grave, and manga friend, the guy, is on the right side of the grave, and Kotaro's on the other opposite side. And he's saying, yeah, he's like, one day he's like, I'm going to find my mom, and her name was Satori or something like that, Sayori or something like that. And he draws out the glyphs for the Japanese letters for what her name is. And of course, as manga guys clean the other side, he stops and his eyes get wide and you see the caption that says Sayoro. But so the mother is buried there as well in the family plot, and Kotaro has no idea. He has no clue, and the kid is unknowingly washing and cleaning his own mother's grave while talking about one day wanting to see her and do this with her again. And and again, I'm sitting there just going, oh my God, what is happening? You got to tell this kid what's up, man. And he doesn't. And he purposely doesn't. And they make it a point for him to say it's the only time he's ever he's like, I'm going to lie to Kotaro. And it's the only time I'm ever going to do it because there's no way. You can't say, oh yeah, you know how you think your mom went out to the store, man? Just come around this side and just take a gander at what this side says. I'm gonna go over there now, and I'm just gonna give you a couple days to cry it out. Because yeah, guess what? You're unknowingly cleaning your your grandmother and your mother's grave. Bye. But it's those little things. It's like that's a great twist. It's an awesome storytelling twist. It's a great kick in the dick emotionally. But why does it why do we need to hold it from this kid? This kid needs to know. He needs to know, because the only reason we're keeping it from is for a potential conflict in season 2. But the way this kid operates, though, is he's a little Sherlock Holmes. He knows everybody is against him, or what everyone's ulterior motive is in this show. For example, there's 2 dudes that come into his life. One guy who was he was from he knows he's supposedly in town. He's going to rent the apartment underneath Kotaro, and he's there on business. And he knows exactly how Kotaro likes his meal, as he used to eat this meal the same way Kotaro did. And he does all of these things that Kotaro immediately sees as things he can identify with. Well, it turns out that this guy is a private eye hired by his father, by Kotaro's father, to find Kotaro. And the dude at first is a scumbag. He's like, yeah, if he's telling the neighbors, because the neighbors find out right away, he's like, yeah, I'm gonna make my report. It's my job. It's what I do. I'm a private eye. I'm just doing my job. But of course, it turns out that Kotaro he knew the whole time. He just knew the whole time because, I don't know, something gave it away. And it's very, at first you do it the first time, you're like, okay, fine. Kotaro is he's a very observant 60-year-old kid. And he figured out. Great. Moving on. So then few episodes later, around episode 9, there is another guy who comes into his life looking like a typical, I'm going to say typical anime character. He looks like a Dragon Ball Z character, whatever the Saiyan or Super Saiyan. He's got like his hair and all that. So he actually looks like a Tekken character, like from the video game Tekken. He looks like he would be one of the guys that fights Jin or whatever, or it could be Jin. But so he comes into his life, and he's one of his old friends from the group home, and he's hanging out with Kotaro, and he's like, hey man, I'm thinking about, we should get our own place. If you give me some of the money, it'll cover the moving costs. And right away, if you know how stories operate, this dude's scamming Kotaro. And of course he is. He's racked up some huge debt after his time in the group home, and he's paying it off with the money that Kotaro is giving him. It's not going to moving expenses at all. But turns out Kotaro knew that as well, because the guy's got to tell when he lies, his finger twitches. And in the group home, we get some flashbacks. The group home, someone's wallet goes missing. And then there's other times where his finger twitches and he's not telling Kotaro the truth and all that. And there's suspicious things about this guy's past. He used to shoplift, whatever. When the guy first shows up at Kotaro's apartment this time, his finger twitches when he's telling him about whatever. And so Kotaro just sees the telemedia. And like I said, he's a little Sherlock Holmes. He immediately knows that something's up and it's wrong, but he doesn't care because he's his friend. And he's always believed in him because he helped get his name cleared when the wallet went missing before. Because shockingly, he didn't actually steal that wallet. And it's like first time fine, second time, okay. Maybe Kotaro's just really good at body language and all this thing. But again, he's a 60-year-old child. He's got the life experience to know these things. But again, we're talking about a 4-year-old here. And either tell me that this is the most eccentric, advanced, forward, like a virtuoso 4-year-old ever and a prodigy, or just let me know that this kid's lived on the streets and had an experience in hard life, and this life in the group home taught him how to live this way and taught him how to catch these signs and all of that. But none of that's ever explained. We're just supposed to catch Kotaro being a 4th grader and take that 4-year-old and take that as just, that's just how Japanese 4-year-olds are when they get into some shit in their family, and more power to that country, because they should take over the world if their 4-year-olds are this resourceful, and it's very strange. They're on top of that strangeness of him being a little Sherlock Holmes. There's this one dedicated part where the first thing we see in the first episode is him giving tissues to his new neighbors. There's another period of a later episode dedicated to the fact that Kotaro is trying to buy the best tissues at the grocery store. He's got like his name like on a list for when they come in, everything. We are told that he has eaten these tissues at some point. And it turns out that he was so starved at home by his neglectful father and all that he had to eat tissues. And I Googled it. I said, is eating tissues a thing in Japanese culture? It turns out that there is a thing for that sort of, because apparently there is an animator who worked on Japanese anime. She apparently animators over there are notoriously underpaid and overworked and kind of like, a Marvel VFX artist, something like that. But over there, they get nothing for the job that they do. So they kind of have to live paycheck to paycheck. If even that, they have to scrap together change to get even the barest of meals. So she resorted to putting soy sauce on tissues, and the high-end tissues apparently have lotion, which has a little bit more nutrients in it. Not a lot, but a little more, and they taste better. So that's how she knew that she could eat tissues just to kind of get by. So basically, she's surviving on soy sauce and tissue lotion. But I could almost see somebody putting this show together and seeing that, probably knowing that person, being like, I'm going to put this little wrinkle into this little kid's life. And at the same time, it's like, wow, that's an interesting little fact. But you're also thinking, oh my God, this 4-year-old had to survive off of tissues at some point. When did he learn to become a gourmet chef that he is? Because he's shown making this crazy meal at one point. It's like a 10-course meal. And apparently he does it for himself every night at dinner. And there's a lot of contradictory stuff here that if I'm watching this and I'm seeing this kid who's a 60-year-old child, he's got this awful past, but he's making the best of it. That's fine. That's one thing. That's great. But to add every little aspect of his life to somehow revolve around these horrible backgrounds, like him eating tissues to survive. Oh my God. Oh my God. It's depressing. And I don't know what to make of it. I just don't know what to make of it. And maybe this quote unquote slice of life anime like genre, maybe they're all like this, and maybe they're all meant to give me 60-year-old children who teach their town life lessons, or how to make things better, or how to just kind of accept who they are and move on with it, because we're all better together, essentially. Maybe that's the message of everything, and it's a great message, but you don't need to go so well. You don't need to go so eccentric with it, but likewise, you need to kind of go eccentric with it to keep me interested, if that makes any sense at all. And I gotta admit, it kept me interested, and I watched the whole thing. I wasn't bored, but once it got to be Kotaro solves the problem of the week by knowing everything, that got annoying. And apparently there's going to be a season 2. I might check in on season 2 just to see what happens with the dead mother, to see if anybody ever, spills the beans on that one. And it's a strange show. It's an interesting show. And this path that Mike is now leading me down of watch more anime to see if I crack. This one didn't do it, Mike. It didn't do it. It almost did, because now I'm never going to not think about a Japanese four. Every time I meet a little 4-year-old, little Japanese kid, I'm going to be like, wait a minute. Do you live by yourself? Where are your parents? What's going on here? Do you have a toy sword on you? Have you eaten tissues? It's an interesting show. I got to give them credit for that. Netflix put together a good 10 episodes. I won't be checking out the manga. I won't be going any farther in than I did for just watching this show. But so that was what Mike told me to watch this week. Next is going to be my turn for him. I haven't really figured out what I'm going to have him watch. Maybe I will turn the tables on Mike, and maybe I will have him watch an anime that I found on Netflix. I haven't watched more than a couple episodes, so I'm not entirely sure it's worth this platform yet. But I do have some other amazingly bad movies I can recommend him, like Tiptoes. So if you haven't seen that, check it out. Like and subscribe to this video. Check out our actual podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, pretty much anywhere you get your podcasts. You can find them on there, because thanks to Anchor for us. And I think Overcast is one of them. That's another popular one. Free Player FM, I think, is the one I use. That's a good one. You can find our show pretty much everywhere. Hit us up on Facebook, Instagram, the usual. Like I said, leave comments on here if you think I got Kotaro all wrong, or if there's more to Kotaro that I missed, something like that. Just let me know. Until next week, when I give Mike some stuff to watch, we'll see you guys then. So long.